Golden State Media Concepts bring you Book Review Podcast, a haven for bookworms of all ages and the widest genres, from mystery to memoirs, romance to comedy, fantasy to sci-fi. If you love to read, this is the podcast for you. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Book Review Podcast.
Welcome to the GSMC Book Review Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Sarah, and do you ever have those days where you wake up and you've got your to-do list firmly in your head or written down or however you do it, and you come to the end of the day and you got so much done, but most of the things on your to-do list did not get done? Now, sometimes this can be because you are procrastinating doing something else productive instead of tackling the things on your to-do list. I'm pretty good at that. But lately, I have had that day for about a month. Seriously, I have had so many things pop up in my day for the last couple of weeks, and my to-do list keeps getting longer and longer, and then the things keep popping up, and they're not, I'm going to distract myself from my to-do list by doing this thing over here. I'm not going to, it's not like, I'm going to take 3, 4, 5 hours, binge watch some TV and crochet instead of tackling my to-do list. No, I wish. I would love to do that. These are things that need to be dealt with. Things that are unexpected, things that pop up, fires to put out, etc. And it's been going on, and that is why you may have noticed that I am insanely behind on getting you interviews. I feel terrible about this. In fact, I had to cancel something that I said I would do for someone recently. I had to go and humbly say, I am so sorry, I overextended myself and I cannot meet this commitment. So now I have major guilt on a couple of fronts. That front, the not getting podcasts out on time front. Oh my gosh, it's a guilt-a-palooza over here. On a happier note, I have the most fun series and author to bring you in this episode. The author is Ann Charles. The series is set in Deadwood, South Dakota. Let me give you the description of the first book in that series, because, it's always good to start at the beginning. The first book is called Nearly Departed in Deadwood. And the description is as follows. Irony is having a big ol' fiesta, and Violet Parker is the piñata. Little girls are vanishing from Deadwood, South Dakota, and Violet's daughter could be next. Short on time and long on worry, she's desperate to find the monster behind the abductions. But with her jerk-off coworker trying to get her fired, a secret admirer sending creepy love poems, and a sexy-as-hell stranger hiding skeletons in his closet, Violet just might end up as one of Deadwood's dearly departed. Okay, that is the first in the Deadwood series. We're currently on book 11. Book 11 is the newest one in the series, and that is the one that was sent to me to read for the interview. And I started reading it, and I seriously only got like 20 pages in. And while you could certainly read it as a standalone novel, I just felt like I was missing so much, like I wanted to get all of that backstory. So I went to see if they have it, if I could find it on audiobook, because if you're a regular listener of the podcast, you know that I spend a lot of time listening to audiobooks as I work on that never-ending to-do list. And they did. And I have been seriously binging on the Deadwood series audiobooks. No, that's not keeping me from my to-do list. It's actually helping me to accomplish the to-do list. These books are hilarious. They are so entertaining. I think I'm on book 6 now. I've just been as I said, binging them. You get a little more information with each one, so you really do want to start at the beginning, I think. They are character driven, but as the books go on, you get more and more about Violet and her place in Deadwood, her place in the supernatural elements of Deadwood, and she learns about her place in those things as well. I don't want to give too much away, and Anne's going to tell you more about the series, but first of all, the audiobooks have an insanely good narrator. She does great voices. I always know who is speaking before the narrator tells me who is speaking. She is hilarious. The characters are hilarious. I mean, Violet herself is hilarious, but the cast of secondary characters, oh my goodness. I mean, there's a chicken named Elvis. It's a girl chicken named Elvis. I don't know what else to tell you. I mean, I can tell you a lot more, but I don't want to give too much away, except that I seriously busted out laughing over something that Anne wrote and that the narrator, Carolyn Schaefer, said in the book I was listening to tonight. I mean, I just busted out laughing, and then I get weird looks from my husband, but that's okay. Let's go ahead and turn now to the interview with Anne Charles so she can tell you more about this series and some of the other books that she has written that connect to this series. Again, it's the Deadwood series, and the author is Anne Charles. Hi, Anne. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. We're here to talk about the newest book in your Deadwood series. Before we get to the book and the series, though, if you would share a little bit about yourself so my listeners can get to know you a bit.
Sure. Okay. Anne Charles, and I've been writing for many, many years, but I first published the first in the Deadwood series, which is one of my 5 series, and that was back in January 2011. And since then, I have written in that particular series 11 books, and it's ongoing. And I have a couple of series that are connected to it, a prequel series in the process as well that we're on book 3 of that. So I have a bunch of different series. What times can I say the word series? And what I do when I write is all the books are individual series, but they're all connected in some way. It's one world, kind of, but just different types of stuff going on, different settings, different genre mixes. So anyway, I've been doing this since 2011, and I'm working on the 30th book for all of my different series put together. And boy, what else can I say? They're a mix of mystery and a lot of humor. I'm a big fan of including some humor, trying to make you laugh and get away from things for a while. They always contain a little bit of romance. My roots are in romance, although I wasn't good enough to hang out fully in that romance world. But I do have some in every book. And there's also adventure and suspense. There's a lot of supernatural stuff in several of the series because I love to play in the world where what could be. And I think I said suspense already, and some thrills. So my writing is a big mix of genres, and that's partly why I did end up going independent, because when you mix genres this much, it's hard to find a publishing house that wants to take that on, that crazy mess, and put it out there. It's hard to find a place on the bookshelf to fit such a mix of genres. So anyway, that's kind of a Anne Charles world in a nutshell.
Well, thank you for that. And yeah, it is hard sometimes. I think people want to make sure that genres fit neatly into their little genre boxes. And
right.
If you have more than one, it's hard to figure out what to do with that. So this is the 11th book in your Deadwood series. It's called Devil Days in Deadwood, which I love the alliteration, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
Let's start with the series itself. Can you give an overview of the series?
Sure. This series is about Violet Parker. It starts with her. It's first person, so you're only ever in Violet Parker's head. And She is a single mom. She's got two twins, a set of twins, fraternal. They're almost 10 years old at the start, and she has recently moved up to Deadwood to live with her Aunt Zoe. And she's trying a new career. She's trying to be a real estate agent where she can have more time freed up to do stuff with her kids and work her schedule better. So that's kind of where you start in. And she's struggling as a real estate agent. She's not real good at it yet. And trying to sell a house, trying to get some money going. She's got a limited amount of time to prove herself before she could lose the job. So there's that initial stress in the first book of, can I make this career go? But there's so much more, because when she gets up and when she's been there a couple months and she starts realizing, hey, these little blonde girls are going missing. They're disappearing. Someone's kidnapping them. And the scary part is they are the same age as her daughter. They're blonde like her daughter. And so she gets involved in it because the similarities to her own child. And she's worried, and she starts seeing things and noticing certain people doing certain things. So that's kind of the start of the mystery of what's happening to these little girls, and I have to find out before something happens to my daughter. And that's kind of what gets Violet going. Now, as the series progresses, she realizes she's not just a mom and a real estate agent. There's so much more to who she is and her history and her ancestors and the role that she plays and why she was called to Deadwood, kind of, and what's going on under the surface. And that's where the supernatural comes in. So it's not a smack in your face right at the start with Nearly Departed in Deadwood, the first one. You don't go, diving into supernatural full on. It grows with the series as she learns more about herself and what she can do, and surrounds herself with people that have different abilities, sixth senses type of things. Deadwood is the real Deadwood, there is one in South Dakota. It's a lot of history. It's a wonderful town to visit. There's ghosts galore. There's ghost tours everywhere. So it kind of starts with that ghost tour stuff, the ghost feel, and builds from that. And that is the Deadwood Mystery Series. It's about Violet growing, learning, fighting things, and dealing with things, solving some crimes. Some of them are supernatural things going on. So it's a big, wonderful mix of character-driven stories that are all, you could read them out of order if you wanted, but it's so much richer if you go in order with this series.
Yeah, I would agree with that. When I was reading this one, it's number 11, and I'm like, there's so much more that I want to know. And so, excitingly, you have audiobooks of the first part of the series. Excuse me. So I went and snagged the first one in the series so that I can backtrack and get Violet's whole story.
Great.
So I'm excited about that.
Yeah, Carolyn Schaefer reads those for me. And actually, the 11th book is just coming out. I believe it's on pre-order and comes out on the 4th of this month. So it's about to go live with the 11th book. And I've had Carolyn Schaefer reading it since the beginning. So if you get the same voice throughout, and she's so good. Oh, man, some of the voices she does, she gives me goosebumps. She does such a great job.
I love that. And I love that it's the same narrator, because that can be frustrating when you're listening to a series and then suddenly totally different voices.
Yeah.
So, you mentioned that it's from Violet's point of view, and you get her perspective, which she's very colorful.
Yes.
Not only in language, but also in purple. There's definitely a purple theme.
Yes, the purple boots. When I started this series, and the purple boots are in every color, and it became the branding that went with this story. It was not my intention to have the purple boots be such a thing, but from the start, in the first book, when she's wearing, and old man Harvey is there, he notices her boots, and I thought, what color are her cowboy boots? Well, of course, if I had a choice, purple's my favorite color. They'd be purple. So there it went. And from there, it's just built on the purple boots and other things. Chickens. Elvis the chicken is a huge thing with fans. They love Elvis. So it's just such a wonderful thing that has grown with this series and the community of readers and the fun we share. So we have so much fun with all parts of the characters and the purple boots.
It's funny how some of those things take on a life of their own, like
Right.
the boots or Elvis the chicken.
Yes.
In some ways, Violet is just your average woman trying to juggle being a single mom, having a career. She just has to then also juggle being a single mom, having a career, and fighting the supernatural.
Right. Yeah, all that comes with it. So
yeah,
and that was big. I wanted Violet to feel like someone we could all relate to. I mean, she certainly makes mistakes. She's not a perfect parent. She's not mother of the year. So all the things that we deal with in normal daily lives, Violet goes through a lot of that too. But then there's the supernatural part that we have to add into it that she's got to struggle with.
All right, so there is your introduction to Violet Parker and the town of Deadwood. I was actually telling my 14-year-old niece about this series that I am listening to. She and I love to talk about books, and I said it was set in Deadwood, South Dakota, and she said, "There's someplace called Deadwood, South Dakota?" And I was like, yes. Geez, kid, I don't know, we need to broaden what kind of books you're reading, especially since she lives in Montana. She should know names of towns in South Dakota. Oh, well. Anyway, that is the description of the series. And when we come back, we're going to take our first break. When we come back, Anne's going to talk about her inspiration for this series and for Violet. So stay tuned. You're listening to the GSMC Book Review Podcast, and I'll be right back.
Golden State Media Concepts bring you the Bible Study Podcast. Reflect and journey the Bible as together we study God's Word and be inspired. Bible study made fun and informative for all ages. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Bible Study Podcast.
Welcome back to the GSMC Book Review Podcast. I am speaking with Anne Charles about her Deadwood series, and let's go ahead and find out what her inspiration for this whole thing was.
So then what was your inspiration for the series as a whole?
Well, okay, so I've been going to Deadwood, South Dakota since I was a kid. My mom moved there when I was in 7th grade, my mom and stepfather. And so I spent a lot of holidays, a lot of summers, a lot of time there in Deadwood, exploring, searching, for stuff to do as a teenager, exploring the Black Hills and all the mining stuff, the old mines, all that spelunking and good stuff that I was able to do as a child, and researching, doing a lot of, learning about the history. So that's always been in there. Well, I was visiting one of the many times, and I was pregnant with my daughter, my second child. And one of the things that had recently happened way back then, it was early 2000s, the mine, the big, huge Homestake mine, which employed so many in the area, it was a gold mine, had recently fully kind of shut down. And so there was a lot of unemployment, a lot of people struggling, and I just thought, wow, what would it be like as a single mom coming here, trying to make a living, trying to get by? What are some things that, would happen? And then if you're a real estate agent with all these haunted houses and buildings, what kind of things might you experience going around? So, and that just all came together, and my husband and I were talking about it all the way back. Back then I lived over in Seattle, and we talked about it all the way back to Seattle, and we sat outside kind of plotting and talking about what could be in this particular series. And it all felt so right out of the gate from, the first line in book one. It just, boom, went right on the page. And so, I think it's just years of everything coming together at the right time, and I was ready to write it. And and I'd improved my skills enough to be able to handle this thing, that it was time. And that really kind of is the inspiration behind Here Comes Violet Parker, and Nearly Departed in Deadwood.
Thank you. So Violet, as you mentioned, is pretty relatable in terms of trying to juggle her roles. What else about Violet do you think will resonate with readers?
So she's not, at the time when I started this, I had read so many books with these amazingly beautiful heroines. They're perfect physically, and they seem like, they weren't in love. They didn't have the love of their life, but this wasn't quite right. But they really had their stuff together, And I could not relate. I was, dealing with tiny children and working and trying to do all this stuff, and my hair would be crazy. And, geez, did I shower today? Do I need to, when did I brush my teeth? That kind of a thing. So I wanted to, come up with a heroine that seemed more real in that way. That's a mom that's not perfect. She's not, everything's right. Violet's hair is one of the things. It's a big joke within the story. I mean, not to her. She's always, don't talk about my hair, kind of thing. She's got this curly hair that's kind of out of control. She tries to corral it, but the curls escape. And we've all met people with super curly hair that they, summer they're just like, this is miserable. So I wanted, it kind of represents Violet, her curly hair that she can't control, that's always sticking out this way and that. So that was one thing that I wanted to bring across, that, hey, here's this woman that she's trying. She's really trying, but things are crazy. Her hair's crazy. Her life's crazy. And the other thing is that Violet is not, the perfect tall model beauty either. She's curvy, curls and curves. And I try not to really give set defined images or, actresses or characters a lot of times for my characters, because I want you to form that picture in your mind of what the character looks like and who she is. And that was something with Violet. I give you enough to give you an idea, and then you go forth and create it yourself that works for your world in your head, And so I think just that's part of it. And then as we talked about, she struggles. She struggles with her job. She struggles with money. She struggles as a parent. She struggles in love, trying to find the right guy. She has a bad history when it comes to men. So it's just she's fun in that way, in that she's not the perfect person, which would be a little boring, I think, for me. She's all the craziness mixed up in one person, but you want to know her because she is funny. She has, she handles things with humor when things go south.
Yeah, thank you for that. So talking about a particular book in a series is always challenging because you want new readers to know about the series, but you don't want to give them spoilers. But then you want existing readers to learn about the new book. So no pressure. What can you say about the new book that's not going to give too much away about the series in general?
Well, so we're on book 11 now. And I have a whole overall series story arc that I have in mind. So it's not just willy-nilly stories coming out. We're moving towards stuff, things and turning points and stuff in the whole series. And I can tell you that with book 11, the first 10 books, we're really, we're going through the initial opening scene and inciting incident of the series, the first turning point of the series, and really getting settled into head toward the midpoint. And that's where we're at now with book 11. She has certain things she can do now, abilities that she's learned that she has, and some stuff forced on her, and things she's learned about her ancestors and her role in this world. So now, where before she was struggling to just understand and deal with it and deal with the things she was seeing, now she's gotten to the point where, okay, this is what I am. But I'm still a mom, and I still got to do this other stuff. But this is what I am, and this is what I have to do. And I don't know what the heck I'm doing, but I'm going to go forward anyway and take care of business like I'm supposed to. But I'm going to need help of those around me because I can't do this alone. So we've reached that point now where she's going forward, and that's where all the other characters that she knows, the friends, her boyfriend, her best friend, one of the cops that has kind of come over and started helping, they all come into play because now they're a team, and they're working much more as a team going forward to deal with some pretty dangerous supernatural creatures coming at them. So it's exciting. I feel like here we go. Now we're really going to, kick some butt and go forth, because we've got problems that have been brewing and building and all these different things coming in, and it's getting worse. An infestation, if you will, is getting worse. So now we're going to have to go kick some butt and make things happen. And that's what you'll feel for those who have been with me since the start. It's really a feel of, here we go, yeah. And the readers that have read it already have just loved that. So excited. It's so much fun. It's fast-paced, lots of action, lots of humor, all that good stuff going for it. So without giving anything too much away, that's kind of book 11.
Nicely done. There is a cast of rather colorful secondary characters that are a lot of fun. Do you have a particular favorite of those characters?
Oh boy, that's tough. They're not really, because each one I love with every scene when, okay, Violet's now with this character. Because like I said, we're only ever in Violet's point of view. So she is there with everybody, right? But it's so different. With each character on scene, especially if she's alone with each one, it's so much fun and it feels different. And one of the things I love is it reminds me of real life, and like when you go spend time with your mom or your dad, and then when you go spend time with your best friend, and then you go spend time with another friend that's maybe a work friend, and how different each relationship is, but yet fulfilling and fun, and struggles. Sometimes it's not as fulfilling. It's more frustrating. That's the great part about just only being in Violet's head, is we get to experience all those different relationships as Violet does going through. And then there's scenes where they're all together, or there's groups of them. There's 3 or 4 along with Violet. And then to have the dialogue bouncing all over with each character in their own way, that's so much fun too. I love Old Man Harvey. He's her, bodyguard, if you will. He's self-appointed. And he's got the funniest things he says and the way he looks at life. Doc, her boyfriend, is always fun to be with because he's Doc. I mean, he's romantic a little bit, but yet he respects what Violet is and can do. I love the scenes with the cop, Detective Cooper. They're 2 alphas butting heads in there. And then with Violet's best friend, Natalie, who is a fixer and understands Violet like nobody else because they've known each other since like kindergarten, or they were 4, I believe. So, and then there's Violet's aunt too, who's a lot of fun and kind of her mentor. And of course, Cornelius, who's crazy in his own way, eccentric, and the paranormal investigator with / ghost whisperer. So I really can't pick one, because with each scene with the different characters, I am always so excited to go in and let's see what happens now, and let's see how this is going to go and see what comes of it. So it makes it fun to write, the books, because I really get to feel like they're my friends too, and I'm sitting there with each different one.
It's kind of like asking you to pick your favorite child. Not an easy question.
Right.
What kinds of research have you done for the series?
Well, as I said, I spent a lot of time growing up there, so I go into it knowing so much about the history of the area. But I do still spend a lot of time reading about different parts of the history of Lead or Deadwood and the gold mining and all that good stuff, the wild times, notorious characters from the past there. So there's a lot of, every year I go to Deadwood at least once, and my husband and I try to spend time at the library or digging through, more books we find and exploring, fortunately now so many of the locals know what I do, and they're fans of the series. So I'm I'm really lucky that they allow me to go in these old buildings and take tours and do all kinds of things that I dreamed of when I was a child, walking around there, exploring Deadwood. Now I get to go see these buildings on the inside and learn all about the history and have access to things I didn't before, which is wonderful. It's one of my favorite things about writing this series. And then I also have several locals. One in particular, she will read the book before it goes live, and her and her brother have been there all their life, and she's 70. So they will go through to make sure I have the smallest details about the area accurate. And they'll help me if I need help finding more information about a particular thing. Because Deadwood's a real place in the northern Black Hills where we've set this, it's really important, I think, to try to be accurate when I'm dealing with real history that I'm talking about, as much as possible, so that the locals can identify it with it, like it, want to tell others about it. They want to be part of that, and I think that's important. Plus, my mom lives there, and I always say, got to shop at the grocery store, and I'd hate for people to yell at her, "Your daughter screwed it up again," as she's trying to buy some apples or something.
Yeah, I'm from a small town, and that would happen.
Right.
Oh my goodness, yep, coming from a small town, totally understand what that's like. Thankfully, I am not an author writing books about the town my parents live in, and, not like a famous podcaster or anything, so people are constantly talking to my parents about what they heard on my podcast. Plus, my parents don't leave the house right now because of COVID, so they don't go to the grocery store to buy apples. But yeah, let's go ahead and take our second break of the podcast. When we come back, we'll be talking about how this series is a combination of fact and fiction, of real places and made-up places. Stay tuned. You're listening to the GSMC Book Review Podcast, and I'll be right back.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Welcome back to the GSMC Book Review Podcast. I am speaking with author Ann Charles about her Deadwood series. Before the break, we were talking about Deadwood and about how her mother lives there and, writing a series of books that is set in a place where a family member lives, I'm sure is very interesting. Let's go ahead and return now to the interview. As I said before the break, we'll be talking about the fact that the location is a real place, and some of the places that Anne writes about are real, some are not. So let's go ahead and get back to that interview.
The series is a mix of fact and fiction, past and present. So that sounds like it would be a lot of fun to write. How does that just come naturally in your writing process, or do you try to fit those pieces together in a certain pattern?
Some of it's natural. I'll have a scene in mind, and as I'm going, I suddenly realize, I need to dig more research about this particular thing, or I'll know I'm going to talk about a certain building, and so then I'll go dig through and find out information about that particular building. For example, book 4 is Better Off Dead in Deadwood. And on the front of the book is the old opera house, Homestake Opera House in Lead. And that is a real building. It's been there since turn of the century. I mean, the first one, not 2000, 100 plus years. And I wanted to make sure I had, because a lot of the scenes take place inside of it. So I had toured it. I had got, my husband and I were fortunate to have a private tour and go all over the place, up and down, take pictures, have what I needed. So then I wanted to, get the details of when it was built, why it was built, the purpose of it, who was instrumental in that, and what it's been used for, and things that have happened in it. I wanted to have all that detail in there too. So doing research in that way, studying up on that and reading about it, but then also making it so when you read that book, if you can now go tour the Opera House and ask to have the Anne Charles version, and they will take you to places that are not normally on the tour, but that's in the book, so that you can see it for real, which is really cool of them.
Yeah,
I know. So it's the whole. When I do the research, it's a real big mix of what feels right, what is needed for this. Another building on the front is Book 7, A Wild Sprite. That is what I call the Sugarloaf Building. That is not a real building. It's not even a building that's really set where it is. And I made up the building. I made up the history of the building and fit it into the environment where I put it, so it made sense, but it's completely fiction. So I still did research for the different ethnic groups that were mining in that area of Leet, because in Leet, different ethnic groups lived in different areas. So keeping that in mind, and then setting a building within it, that's another example of incorporating fact or truth with, the fiction that I am writing about.
You indicated that, this is an ongoing series, and so do you have an end point in mind? Do you want to just write until maybe Violet stops being as fun to write, or what's your plan for the series?
Part of it is, if things stop being fun, if the fans are done, why am I going to keep, beating the dead horse? But I do have a series arc in mind that I'm following, and there could be an ending, or it could also continue in a different direction. So I am kind of going forth, keeping in mind what the readers want to happen, as well as me. What's fun? What am I enjoying? Because if I'm not having fun writing it, I think that's going to show on the page, and the series suffers because of it. So, yes, I do have an ending in mind, but I often tell people this series, it's like sitting at the bar next to Violet, and she is telling me a story, and I'm just writing it down, what's happening, so it's not like I'm God and I'm running this world. It feels more like she told me the story. I've also said it's like looking through a keyhole and watching. I'm watching what's going on, and I'm just turning around and telling you, and now this is happening, and now this is happening. So it feels like it's real to me. I often joke with people, let's say something, about the book and it's fiction. I'm like, what do you mean? They're not real characters? Because some days they feel awfully real to me. So I do have something in mind, but I'm trying to, just like when I plot and write a book, I try to keep things open for other ideas to come through, other things to change.
Yeah, that makes absolute sense. So are you working on the next installment in this series? Are you working on something in one of the other series? What are you working on right now?
Right now, I had mentioned we have a prequel series to the whole Deadwood series. And it's a series I write with my husband. It's called the Deadwood Undertaker series. And it's the same world, the same supernatural world mixed in. But what happened back in the 1870s when mining was the thing, it was the gold rush back then, and Deadwood was just born. It was, becoming this crazy place with all these influences coming in, all this mining and business, the boom time. So it's kind of what happened then that led up to what Violet's dealing with. Now, this is book 3 we're working on that series. It's called Can't Write Around It. The first 2 are out. And some of the characters that you meet in Violet's world, remember that's supernatural, are in this world too, because, they're not human. So it's really fun for the readers and me, because we have characters that we know from this series, and here you're seeing more about them. Or someone who might be a ghost in the modern day series, but in this series they're alive. So you get to, really learn more about these characters and what happened and all the excitement that went on back then. So it's a fun mix of Western, humor, again, I always love humor, a little bit of mystery, and some supernatural mixed in with the whole thing. And it's like a big puzzle. Okay, here's that person. Is that the same as who's this, and this person in Violet's world or not? But anyway, that's what I'm working on. We're trying to get number 3 out in that series. In September is the goal, and then I'm going to return to, I believe, we have a Christmas book we're working on too, but I'm going to return to Deadwood number 12 after that, with the goal of having that one out in January or February of 2021.
How has the pandemic changed the way you work, if at all?
Well, it is hard to write humor when there's so much not humor going on in the world. I have to be careful. I have to limit my time spent watching news, reading headlines, and be more careful with that, because I have to still be able to pull up all the humor and the laughter in spite of things. So that's changed a little, but it wasn't always the happiest place before the pandemic either, and I wrote humor through it. So that's been a little bit different. Having my children home, they're now teenagers, junior high and high school, and one of the wonderful things is I don't have to drive. We drive them to school. That took up time. It would break your writing time up. That's gone. So we're at home a lot more, and there's no disruption in writing. And that can be really good, but it also means sometimes I'm working 12, 15-hour days, because there's no reason to stop. I might as well keep going and get this done. And that can be hard physically when you're writing that much, and mentally it wears you down. So I often say, if anything, I think I'm working harder through this because of the lack of disruptions every day, involved with school. And now they're starting online school next week, so we'll see how that goes. But I expect, again, they're older, so they can kind of handle their own schedule. So I'll be going back to work even more now that they're back working, and less, trying to do stuff with them to get them out.
Definitely a different time in the world currently. for everyone's trying to figure out the new normal.
Right.
Are there any of your other books or series that you would like to highlight during our time together?
Well, as I said, I have 5 different ones I write. So you've heard about 2, the Undertaker series, which is Western, 1870s, and then the current day Deadwood Mystery series. I also have a really fun series, and it ties in kind of with Deadwood, Jackrabbit Junction series, and that takes place down in southeast Arizona. And it's the Morgan sisters who grew up in the house next to Violet. They've since moved down south, and that is kind of a fun mix of adventure with humor, a lot of humor, a little bit of romance, mystery, treasure hunting. Often before I start writing one of those books in that series, I'll read Treasure Island again, because that feel of, this is fun, we're going to go find some treasures. So that's a really fun series. And what's neat too is the characters. There's characters that go back and forth between the modern day Deadwood series and the Jackrabbit Junction series, and you'll see them in both worlds, some of the main characters even. So it's a lot of fun, because if you know one group, you'll go, there's so-and-so, she's down here now, or she's calling, and that's a blast. And that is just a wild and crazy series, the Jackrabbit Junction series. There's no paranormal currently in that. Just a lot of action and adventure, and some crazy sisters that are wild and rowdy. I call them Wild and Woolly Morgan sisters. And then I have the Dig Site series, and there's currently 2, and I'm building that. But that's Violet's brother, Quint, and it's archaeology mixed, and we're down in the Yucatan. And so then if you like a little bit of adventure and mystery and archaeology, we have different dig sites we're at, learning about the Maya and all kinds of crazy stuff happening, and that has some supernatural mixed in too. So, and they, like I said, they all kind of group around, they're all kind of tied in with different ways and different characters. But for the most part, my books are character-driven stories. So if you're there just to watch, the mystery each time, that's not what these are. These are about characters that you're going to meet, some you're going to love and laugh with, some you're going to hate, and they'll drive you crazy. It's all about how people are handling what's going on in their world and the crazy stuff going on.
Thank you for that. When you take the time to read for yourself, do you have favorite genres and authors?
Well, it's kind of crazy. You'd think I'd read a lot of mysteries, but I don't. I love to read westerns. I have since I was a kid. Zane Grey, of course, Louis L'Amour, lots of others, Luke Short, some fun westerns. And then I'll get tired of those, and a lot of times I will turn to romance. I remember I mentioned earlier I started in romance, but I didn't do well at it. So I always have some, but I do still love that genre, and I will read, oddly enough, I'll go clear to a lot of times historical Regency era romances, just because I really love the work that these authors put into everything, clothing, setting, houses. It's so amazing the work these guys do to get their stories, those parts of their stories right, as well as, create some great characters. So I'll read contemporary romance as well. Horror, I'll go into the horror realm and read, of course, Stephen King has been one since I was a kid. I like his gory stuff more, so I'll hop around all these different genres, which I think is why I write the mixed genre, because I don't like to just set in one for too long and get different feels and different flavors. But more than I read nowadays, I tend to watch movies because I'm a visual learner, and so I take movies that I love and I'll watch them over and over and over and try to figure out what the director was thinking, what the editor was trying to do here, and different things, and how would I make that expression that actor just gave, how would I put that on the page? So I'll use those to study and learn from. So I tend to actually watch more movies than I do read books because of that.
Okay, time for our last break of the podcast. When we come back, we'll be giving all the pertinent info like website and social media. So stay tuned. You're listening to the GSMC Book Review Podcast, and I will be right back.
Still on the search of that one true love? On the limbo in this crazy world of dating, marriage, relationships? Well, listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Relationship Podcast, your one-stop podcast for everything about relationships.
Welcome back to the GSMC Book Review Podcast and the conclusion of my interview with Ann Charles.
I know you have a website, so if you can share your website address as well as where people can interact with you on social media.
Sure. My website is www.anncharles.com, and that's A, N as in Nancy, N as in Nancy, Charles. So that is my website. And then social media-wise, I'm on Facebook, I'm on Twitter, I'm on Instagram. trying to think what other social media. YouTube. I have a YouTube channel. I've been doing this year since COVID. I've been doing a lot of Facebook live shows with readers and friends, and then we're able to save them and put them on the YouTube channel so you can watch them if you weren't able to participate or be there. And we went through all my Deadwood series books, like kind of like a live book club I did. So you can go onto my YouTube channel and watch those. If finish a book, I recommend that you finish the book first and then go watch the one that pertains to that, because we'll talk about stuff that happens.
Very cool. I love that. Because sometimes when you finish a book, you're like, oh man, I want to talk to somebody about that, or I want to know more, or get some more insight. So
right.
Very, very cool. We have talked about a lot of different topics today, but is there anything that we haven't covered that you would like to mention at this point?
No, I don't think so. We did talk about podcasts, or not podcasts. Of course we talked about that, but audiobooks. I mean, my books are ebooks on all platforms right now. They're also print books that you can get, and as well from me, and I can do autographed copies, with whatever you want on them, I ship. And then I have audiobooks of just about every story except the Undertaker series we have not put into audio yet. But if you like to listen instead of read, then you can always, I often say when I exercise or when we take road trips, I love to listen to audiobooks. So they're all out there as audio as well if you enjoy listening instead.
Wonderful. And I actually just realized that there was something that I wanted to ask you that I did not. So talk a little bit about the illustrations throughout the book.
Oh, right. So, I initially tried to do the usual route, the traditional route, and went through a series with an agent and all kinds of stuff. And in the end, the mixed genre was the big strike against me time and again. So I decided to go forth back in 2011 as an independent. Well, actually, I formed a small press at the time and then have since gone totally indie. But once I did that, my brother, who has been drawing since I was a little kid, and he was a little kid, he said to me, I'd love to, try my hand at some illustrations for the cover or inside if you're interested. And I said, of course. That would be awesome. Would make it, some original art, which is hard to get. So the covers on most of my books, except for the Deadwood short series, are actual is art that my brother draws, and then he also does illustrations for inside. So each book most all books have usually about 6 to 7 drawings, including the original art that go with the story. And so he'll take, like for the covers, he sends the art pieces. And then I've had different graphic designers over the years. Currently, for the last few years, it's been my husband, who also is the co-author, Sam Lucky. But he does all the graphic art with the original art, and we make the covers. So it's really fun because it's not stock photo. It's all his drawing, my brother's drawings. And then, we play with it, make it a fun cover, and go forth. So it kind of helps with, if you're into marketing, branding, because you can tell an Ann Charles book usually by the cover art, because it's my brother's art, and it looks, even though they're different, there's a feel to it. But yeah, it's fun. It's really great to get to work with him on this, because we have fun together, planning and plotting, what's going to be on a cover, and then watching it come to life, and as an author, getting to say, hey, can we have this on it? I want to do this with this pose and have this particular thing. And to be able to do that with an artist is just amazing. It's wonderful.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, it's definitely a family affair between your brother and your husband, and that's really cool.
Oh, it's crazy. My older sister is my bookkeeper, which when she cracks the whip, that's kind of my older sister. So she's bossing me around. Get me that bookkeeping for July. And then my mom has been a big help up in Deadwood, and she's a publicist kind of that goes around and talks up the books and does all kinds of stuff up there. I mean, it's just family. My sister-in-law is my assistant. So, yeah, it's a family affair. We joke that when somebody new is going to come into the family, we We want to know what their skills are they can
right.
offer to the process, to the group.
if your kids are gonna, bring in a spouse, you'll have to interview them. Okay, you can only come into the family if you fulfill this particular niche.
I know, it's funny. I mean, even my brother's wife over the years, she reads the first draft, and as I write them, and helps me come up with ideas for illustrations. So we really. Everybody's involved. If you're in this family, you might get something assigned to you. So get ready.
I love that. That's wonderful. Well, Anne, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me today about not only the Deadwood series, but all of your books. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been fun, and if you keep going with the series, I hope you get plenty of laughs. I mean, my purpose from the start has always been to give you something to smile about, to take you away, and just make your day brighter and make you smile a little bit more. So I'm hoping that you get some enjoyment from Violet and her crazy life.
Absolutely. I can't imagine that I wouldn't. I mean, she's very fun.
I totally stand by that very fun that I just said as at the conclusion of that interview, because at that point I had started listening to the first audiobook, but now, as I said, I've binged. I think I'm on number 6. I really don't remember. I've lost count. And they are so much fun. They are so funny. I am sucked in. I'm going to be sad when I finish number 11 and I have to actually wait for the next one to come out. I don't want to wait for the next one to come out. I need to know. I need to know more about what's going on. It's amazing reading those first, whatever it was, 20 pages that I read, and then I started listening to the series, and I kept thinking, oh yeah, I remember that character from that first 20 pages. Oh, that's the backstory there. Anne ties things together so well. I mean, everything flows so nicely. It's really like a television series where each book is an episode. I mean, kind of a long episode, but things get wrapped up at the end of each book, but a lot of things do not. So a lot of things are ongoing throughout the series, and you have to keep reading to find out more. And I would definitely recommend starting at the beginning. You can read them as standalones, but I don't think that's nearly as much fun. But hey, you do you. If you like to start in the middle of stuff, go ahead. Again, that 14-year-old niece that I was just talking about told me that sometimes she's too impatient and she has to flip to the end and read the last 5 chapters. And I was like, oh my goodness. So young, so impatient. But then I just admitted that I'm completely impatient about waiting for books. Not the end of books necessarily, but waiting for books. Thank you to Anne for joining me for this podcast. I had so much fun talking to her. I am having so much fun listening to the series. Thank you, as always, to you, my listeners. So appreciate you tuning in every week and your patience. I was going to say putting up and your patience, but not putting up with your patience. Putting up with my strangeness and my lack of being able to stick to my to-do list lately. I very much appreciate you and your loyalty to this podcast. So thank you for tuning in. If you are a fan of this podcast, and I hope you are, since you're still listening an hour into this particular episode, please do write a nice review or give us a 5-star review. That really, really helps us out. It gets the podcast out there to more people, so more people can listen and find new authors, hopefully, and find new series and new books that they want to read. So write that review, give us a nice 5-star review, and follow us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. GSMC Book Review, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thank you again, as always. I hope you will join me for the next interview. I will be speaking with author Suzanne Park, who has 2 books out that we'll be talking about. The first one is her debut novel, and the second one just came out recently, so she just had that book birthday. One's a young adult, one is a contemporary rom-com, and they're both great. So please join me for my conversation with Suzanne Park on the next episode of the GSMC Book Review Podcast. In the meantime, I hope you have plenty of time to ignore that to-do list and get yourself lost in a good book. Thanks.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Book Review Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. From movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.